The idea of the likes of Rush Limbaugh or Donald Trump lecturing anybody on family values? I mean, sorry, but one thing about my marriage is it's never involved me having to send hush money to a porn star after cheating on my spouse with him or her. So, they want to debate family values? Let's debate family values. I'm ready.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Minipodibus Unum. I'm Eitan.
I'm Dan.
And this is Minipodibus because we are not going to do a full episode. We're just going to do a little bit and continue on with our discussion of why Trump supporters believe his lies and what we can do to combat that disinformation. It's a nice little treat. It's like a little ice cream cone in the middle of the week. And now part two of our discussion on combating Trump's lies and why his supporters believe him. So once a society begins to accept lies as constant, a society can then start moving toward corruption.
Yeah, that's the plan, guys.
So Trump is easily the most corrupt politician in American history.
Thank you. Is this my birthday? You guys are being so cool today.
But absolutely none of this matters to his supporters for the same reasons that lies don't matter to his supporters. And they know that because they don't have to win the popular vote to win the presidency, they only need to win a few swing states.
Yeah.
A hair or a mile, it doesn't matter. So aside from the standard voter suppression techniques, the idea is to energize his base and make everyone else cynical enough that they stay home.
Exactly.
That's why it doesn't matter if he is corrupt, because he'll just say that all politicians are corrupt.
Yep.
Just look at his ads. Remember that ad that he ran that said, oh, he's not a nice guy, but he gets things done.
Yeah, it's Putin-style stuff.
It's exactly
literally
right.
Taken from the Russian handbook. Mm-hmm. Now listen, I am not a bad guy, but I can be a bad guy. Russia, Putin 2020.
That's what we got. And yeah, if they can make everyone believe that all politicians are corrupt, then that leads to tribalism, annihilism, or nihilism. Apparently, both are correct to say.
Yeah, I told you that a long time ago, and you were fighting with me, and I was like, dude,
false
I'm
news,
telling you,
fake news.
People say
so fake and false. Harvard professor Stephen Levitsky, co-author of the book How Democracies Die, explains that extreme polarization can kill a democracy because the more polarized a society becomes, the more willing people are to tolerate anti-democratic violations by their own side. Again, this is why nothing phases his supporters. This is what happens in cults.
Oh, yeah. Bigly.
It's been said by Michael Cohen.
The cult of Trump.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And this is a guy who was in a cult, and he's been studying cults for the last 30 years.
While we're not sliding into autocracy yet, we're moving into dysfunction. We see how dysfunctional the government is. We've seen, saw how McConnell has killed over 400 bills.
It's
what he did to Merrick Garland, how it's keeping the government dysfunctional and then installing the unqualified ideologues into lifetime justice
court, but also every government agency.
Right. So the idea is to keep government dysfunctional, which weakens people's trust in government. Yeah. Right? That's what you hear from the repugs all the time.
Government never works. I'm not voting.
Right.
So it's all a big scam.
And these are people that don't believe in democracy. They won't invest in our democracy because they don't believe in our democracy. They don't believe in the American people. They are actively trying to suppress the American people.
Yeah, the government is just a bunch of stunads. You know what I'm saying?
So with a dysfunctional government, this then moves us towards escalation, which is responding with more anti-democratic tactics.
Yeah.
And then that brings us to autocracy. And so we can see this progression unfolding in front of our eyes every day. To counter this, we should use what Columbia law professor David Posen called, quote, anti-hardball reforms. So, for example, The hardball position that the repugs put in was voter suppression. This is to suppress minorities to vote and therefore weaken our legislatures. The anti-hardball response to this is to organize massive voter drives and get people the proper IDs that they need. Now, that's not to say like don't fight in the courts, but
Right.
with Shelby versus Holder being settled law through the Supreme Court until the court changes, our only options now are to mobilize. Professor Posen continues that we're in the transition from a white Christian patriarchy to a true liberal, small L liberal democracy, which is very difficult. And to make that transition, we need to pass through a period of intense polarization. For us to make it through these birthing pains of liberal democracy with minimal damage to our institutions, Democrats must refrain from these hardball tactics. It's not softball, it's anti-hardball. It's playing hardball, but not playing on their terms. That's the difference. So, so for instance, softball would be with voter ID, say, rolling over and not doing anything, or to continue to whine about it, or to go on TV and maybe file some more lawsuits. Anti-hardball is also hardball. This is to get everyone out, to vote, to overpower them with people. That's the idea. Think of it as Bernie Sanders' campaign. He's not mainstream. If he just popped up in the election war tomorrow, it might be difficult. But his whole thesis of him being elected is that he's going to expand the electorate and overwhelm the Democratic machine and, of course, overwhelm the Republicans.
No, I agree. I agree. We have to do that.
So what Sanders is doing is anti-hardball tactics.
Right. That's fine. But we have to also be playing hardball.
As opposed to the hardball tactics of voter suppression, which is what the repugs are doing. So maybe anti-hardball isn't the best word to use. Maybe we should think of something else. It's almost like matter and antimatter. It cancels it out.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We negate.
Bro, do you even Bernie, bro?
That's a good meme. Okay, so that's the idea of anti-hardball tactics.
Yeah.
And it's what people like Reverend William Barber is doing in North Carolina to combat voter suppression. It's what teachers did in Wisconsin to get Scott Walker out. We don't have to suppress votes on the other side.
No. I'm not saying that, but we have to point out that this is racist and really
100%.
Yell it from a damn thing.
Absolutely. Here's another example. We should be asking why so many people are trying to persuade us that democracy is dead. This is what the repugs are trying to convince everyone of. Right? They're trying to say, like we said, oh, everyone's corrupt, right? They want us to become more cynical.
They're all a bunch of crooks. Everybody knows it. Everybody in my neighborhood in Brooklyn knows they're a bunch of crooks.
Not everybody. Hey, Dan, what's up?
Dude, you know what's up? Anchor.
Your Anchor is what's up.
It is the best and easiest way to make a podcast,
It
bar
is.
none.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally free.
Yeah.
So,
Gratis.
yeah.
That's Latin for free. That's how good this thing is.
Awesome.
We're using Latin, dude.
Yeah.
Shit's getting real.
And you can record and edit
Yeah.
the podcast right from your phone or your computer. You don't have to have fancy stuff. We have fancy stuff. We're fancy people.
We are very fancy.
We're like the humble, fancy people. Yeah.
But we're of the people though.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about Anchor. Anchor's for the people.
Right.
Any kid with a phone can just do it.
And you can make money off of it with no minimum listenership.
Yeah, exactly. Anchor hooks you up with sponsors.
Hell yeah.
And you just do ads for them.
You just
and
do what
you get paid.
And they'll distribute the podcast everywhere. Spotify, Apple Podcast,
Google,
podcasts, you name it.
That.
They'll go to space for you. They love you. Yeah.
Dude,
Anchor.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's free. And it has a lot of great tools. You can do these little videos for social media and stuff that they make for you. And it's amazing. And it's free.
So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Yeah, that's anchor.fm. Do it, guys. Start your own podcast.
Yeah. We should talk about combating this kind of disinformation. What do we do? Once again, attorney Terry Canfield discusses how Trump is using classic fascist-style propaganda techniques that seem to be having an effect with both swing and persuadable voters. The first technique is both-siderism, which is something that we have talked about a lot on the show. And the second is what one study calls the fire hose of falsehoods. This is also sometimes called censorship through noise. This is what Trump does by constantly tweeting out lies. And we'll have a future episode about how Trump manipulates the media through his lies.
And that's also a classic technique of Russia and Putin.
Of course.
And actually a lot of other countries that,
Yeah, any dictator.
Yeah, especially with the internet now.
So these have the effects of, 1, sowing doubt and confusion, 2, undermining confidence in democratic institutions, which we talked about.
I don't believe in nothing the government tells me. They're a bunch of crooks. Bada boom, bada bang.
And 3rd, undermining factuality, which in turn undermines the rule of law. And you can't have rule of law without an intact public confidence, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
These are the roads to authoritarian dictatorship that we see unfolding every day in front of us. This is fascism 101.
Yeah. You've got Barr, who's a dirty cop, and he's crowbarring whatever Trumps want into federal cases here.
God, let's hope these inspector generals find something. Catefield uses the example of Ukraine. Put bluntly, the U.S. president and a major political party are conducting a Soviet-style disinformation campaign against their own citizens. Recall that Operation Ukraine Shakedown was, at heart, a disinformation campaign. Pressure Ukraine to announce an investigation and then fool American voters into thinking it was initiated by Ukrainians, right? And just for the record, it's illegal to conduct PSYOPs on American citizens by the American government.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lawyer somewhere who will say something.
I have the best lawyers. Everybody knows it.
The problem, therefore, is that about 5 to 7% of persuadable voters can either help Democrats win the House, the Senate, and the presidency, but these are also the very same people who are vulnerable to propaganda. And given the recent uptick in Trump's approval, the tactics definitely seem to be working. Even after impeachment, he's at a 49%.
Yeah, that's
approval.
depressing. Yep. Almost got half, baby. Love it.
We have some severe messaging that we really have to do as a party, as people, as Americans.
Yeah, because his messaging works because it's constant, but it's also like surround sound. He's the big subwoofer, and then he's got a bunch of little satellite speakers all over, which is the rest of the party in the Senate and the Congress, constantly repeating the message.
Right. It's like
that's what we need to do.
An art installation at MoMA, one of those audio installations, and you're like, why am I listening to this one note that's making me hemorrhage?
Right.
And it's everywhere and you can't escape it.
Or music in a club.
Or music in a club.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what's happening. And that's what we need to do. We need to amplify and multiply.
Clearly, you know how often I go to clubs.
Yeah. We have to amplify and multiply the message.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're not doing. And that's why he's at 49%.
Right. We'll have a link in the show notes below on the 25 ways that we can combat disinformation, but here are just a few. 1, clearly distinguish between disinformation propaganda and public diplomacy to avoid the argument that, quote, everything is propaganda. While every country can defend their points of view, the author argues the intentional falsification of information must be condemned. So we always have to condemn.
Loudly.
Right. Another one is recognize the limits of a purely state-driven response to disinformation. It will always be suspected of being biased. Civil society must be involved, right? We as citizens have to be saying this. It can't just come from our institutions.
Right. But the leaders of parties have to tell... Yeah, they have to lead and tell the citizens, look,
absolutely.
We need you. And actually, a lot of people that are uninformed, people in the middle, tend to pay special attention to leaders of parties or, of anything when they say something. Absolutely. So they need to use that power to influence them to do the right thing.
Absolutely. We also have to adapt the response to the audience, respond with infotainment-style content for those who can only consume entertaining information. Say, for instance, a podcast hosted by 2 very smart and handsome young gentlemen. Use the testimony of whistleblowers that have left the propaganda machine. They can reveal the methods used. That's very, very important. You have all these recovering Republicans.
Yeah.
You have people like Rick Wilson and George Conway coming out.
Yeah. They're everywhere. They're CNN and MSNBC.
Wendell Potter, who worked for the health insurance companies for many, many years, has become a whistleblower and now spends his time talking about the ways that insurance companies either break the laws or manipulate us.
Yeah, but we need that voice super amplified.
And when debunking information, also expose the propaganda methods used. Familiarize users with those methods so they can detect them elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think that's very important as well.
The guy who did A Thin Blue Line, the hell was his name again?
Errol Morris.
Get Errol Morris to make a documentary about this, about the propaganda type things.
And then Terrence Malick made The Thin Red Line.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know me. I just like thin white lines. Yeah, Adderall and Coke mixed together.
Yeah.
I call it Adicoke.
All right, that's it for a mini pod. What the fuck's the name of this?
Mini Potibus
Unum. That's it for Mini Potibus Unum. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in a few days with another full episode. We hope that you liked it. This is kind of a good, little trial for us. We hope that you guys like it. So please tweet at us and
size.
Yeah, send us an email. We're at ePotibus on Twitter and Gmail. We love your feedback. Please tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and what suggestions you have. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, please also go to anchor.fm/ePotibus to become a supporter. I say this every week, but I mean it all the time. This really does mean a lot to both of us. We both put a lot of work into it, so we really do appreciate it. And we appreciate even more you spreading the word, helping spread the word, because that's how we grow. And
we love our supporters.
Please remember to mobilize, call your congressperson, call your senators.
There's a link in our thing. You can just click on it and check out who your senator or representative is.
And if you love politics, you love the podcast, or you know someone who would send them our way. Send us a shout, send us a tweet, send us
email
a smoke
us,
signal.
DM us.
Yeah, we'd love to have someone else help out.
A little bit of help would be great.